How much did it cost to do your greenhouse, Dean? Okay, this is really hard. Okay, so how do I explain this? I have a skid steer and used a skid steer and didn't factor in the purchase of that skid steer, cost for that skid steer, maintenance on it, or the diesel to do it. That's in the cost of it. I had a bunch of used tin collected. A cost of $0 for me for this project, but for multiple projects, it cost me X amount of dollars years ago. I got deals on insulation. So instead of $60,000 on rigid insulation, my cost was $5,000 for insulation. So massive savings, under 10 cents on the dollar. But there's ways to save money. There's ways to save money differently. Everywhere you live is going to be different. Are you going to build it yourself? Are you going to get used material for yourself? Are you going to hire out somebody to do it? Well, let me try to cover that all together for you to cover this. Okay, so I'll just go through my actual cost, what it cost me. Much of this is used material, cull lumber, material that I had, and the only thing I paid labor on is concrete finishing day and the concrete pump truck, because it's too big of a job to pour to do myself. But I did the plumbing, everything. And then the other thing is gas fitter to hook up my natural gas furnace. Okay, costs. Roof lumber, $2,500. If you wanted to buy trusses, it's $12,000 for the vaulted trusses that you'd need to do this structure. So I saved $10,000 there. Purlins, girts, and posts. So I used cull lumber at a 40 to 50% off. So crooked lumber savings, because it doesn't matter with purlins and girts. Even some of the posts were used, but all said and done, about $4,000 in lumber for that. Insulation, I spent $5,000. If you want rigid insulation, it would be $60,000, like the same insulation I used. If you had to buy new material and we're going to do trusses, you would do blow-in insulation, which would be more cost-effective and quicker to do, and use different types of insulation than the rigid that I used. But my cost, $5,000. Vapor barrier, just a roll of vapor barrier and the tape is $700 for material alone. So that's a silage tarp measuring 60 by 100 feet. Polycarbonate, twin wall 8mm polycarbonate in 16-foot sheets, including the snap lock. So there's a bottom piece you put on the 2x6, butt the polycarbonate sheets up to it, and then a snap lock, hit it down with a rubber mallet gently, and that clamps it all in. So those, not including any screws and hardware, between the purchase, shipping it to my local shipping yard, everything, $4,000 cost for that. Concrete, so just the concrete material, the concrete trucks to bring it out, the concrete pump truck, and paying the finishers to do it was $17,000. My cost. So again, a lot of that is labor and things like that, but that was my biggest cost, because I wanted concrete. It reduces some humidity, it makes it a clean workspace. And do you need concrete? No, but if you don't put concrete, it'll be dusty. Could you do patio blocks? Yes, it's still going to cost a lot. But concrete, I can also integrate my in-floor heat. You can't do that with patio blocks. That was worth it for me. $17,000 concrete. Windows and doors. Used bus windows, literally next to nothing. Used windows, used doors, used commercial door into my shop was $250. If you wanted to buy that new, I would imagine it's $3,000. My garden doors, I do double doors. If you haven't seen my YouTube video on that, you can do that. But one door was $100, the other one is $250. If you want to buy those new, those are minimum $1,000 per door. All of my windows are used, double pane and even triple pane windows on the sides of the greenhouse. I would buy those for probably $50 a window on average. If you wanted to buy them new, $400 a window type of thing. But my cost on windows and indoors was only $2,000. Tin. I had all of the tin for all of the walls, inside and outside, from a deal I purchased a long time ago. So just in part of that deal, what I used and need to use for the walls and the outside of the greenhouse, my cost of used or misordered material was $2,500. For the roof, including the roof screws, so just the roof tin and all the flashing, I had to buy that new. I bought it the exact length that I needed, and new screws with new rubber washers, new flashing, $2,500. Extra miscellaneous lumber, I put another $1,000. Overhead door, if you want to buy an overhead door, you're looking at probably, I don't know, $800 to $1,000 for this little one. I paid $200. In-floor heat and my in-floor sewage and floor drains and things like that. No labor, did it all myself, just on material. And I still have some more things to buy, like a few manifolds when I hook it up, extra piping. But this is half-inch PEX oxygen-proof in-floor heat. This is all of the big sewage, 3 and 4 inch PVC, all fittings, all floor drains, all the bucket drains, extra PEX lines that I ran for all my water lines, things like that. I put a cost for materials alone at $4,000 for all of that. Furnace, my cost, all done, set up. You buy the furnace, the plenum, the PVC natural gas venting pipe, all the fittings for the natural gas lines, the valves, all said and done. My cost $2,500, and again, this is buying a new dented furnace for $500 instead of $1,500 for the furnace. I get deals like that, so it has a dent in it. I don't give a shit, but they can't sell it, so I get it for a third the price. If you can't find that deal, then you're going to pay 3 times as much, right? Wood stove. I think I initially bought that wood stove 10 years ago for $300 or $400. If you wanted to buy a new wood stove of that quality, $1,500. Components for a wood stove. So I had some of the chimney parts, but you do have to buy some insulated chimney, the fittings to go through a vaulted ceiling, all said and done, $1,000 for that. Paint, and for mostly the concrete and lumber, $1,000 for epoxy paint, black paint, and the other paint for that. Painting some wood on the south side of the structure, literally $1,000 by the time you're done buying just paint. Screws and fasteners, extra $500. Electrical, $1,500. So that's electrical panel, running for the sub panel for the greenhouse, all the electrical lines that I did, all the breakers, blah, blah, blah. Minimum electrical, $1,500. Not included in any of this is any fuel I use to go get that. Licensing on your vehicles, fuel for the vehicles, wear and tear, 1,200 hours of labor. So somebody like me, I don't know, can you get somebody that's really competent for $50 an hour now? So that's $60,000 labor. That's not included in this. Any utilities for tools, everything you're doing, trailer rentals to go pick up some of this material, blah, 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 endless. It's really hard for me to calculate, but I would estimate my entire cost, no labor, what it actually cost me, not including 1,200 hours just on the greenhouse construction, $60,000 I did that for. So that is, my joke is a good 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old used wakeboarding boat or pontoon boat. That's what it cost me to do a 3,000 square foot deep winter greenhouse that provides my family and all of the fruits and vegetables that we need and more once I get it all set up, plus fish protein, plus a nice place to be. We don't feel the need to vacation anywhere, go to Cancun. This is our thing. But anyways, $60,000. As a rough estimate, now I've been out, like I'm a builder by trade and a carpenter. So as a rough estimate, if you wanted to hire somebody, it's like, hey, I want a greenhouse like that, but I don't want to source used material. I don't want to go through that time. I don't have the skills. I'm not going to do anything myself. I'm going to sub it all out. I'm going to hire all the labor, hire all the trades, buy all the new material, pay the delivery cost, everything. I would say minimum of $200,000 for a building like this. So yeah, this is Canadian dollars. This is in Saskatchewan, Canada, but probably across Canada it's very similar. So labor, new material, all said and done, exactly what I did, $200,000. That is a rough estimate. If somebody wanted me to build this for $200,000, I'd have to like sit down and really, really evaluate. It would be iffy if I could do it for $200,000, honestly. Okay, so that's all the costs. Next, heating. What does it cost you to run that greenhouse? Okay, in the summertime, no electricity other than some tiny little fish tank pumps, no fans, no heating, no nothing, no air exchangers. Once I have that, it costs nothing for 7 months of the year, essentially nothing. In the winter, for 4, sometimes 5 months of the winter, we have to heat a little bit at night. Lately, I have not had time to use the wood stove, and I'll talk about our natural gas bill right away here. But natural gas is so clean, effective, and cheap that it's not even worth my time. It actually costs me more to heat with wood, not including all the time it takes for me to stoke fire, go split firewood and everything. So that's chainsaw sharpening, chainsaw bars, chainsaw fuel, the crates to do it, the bobcat to move it around, the log splitter, and let alone if you have to buy firewood, right? But it's way cheaper with natural gas. Natural gas is essentially methane gas that is naturally formed pockets underground, and they take it, maybe refine it a little bit, and pump it to you. It's essentially free. It's a natural gas. And the furnace runs at 96% efficiency, turning that natural gas into beautiful heat, barely exhausts anything. So the best thing for the environment, if you're concerned about that, is natural gas, right? So now, unfortunately, where I live right now, and they're going to do another carbon tax increase, but carbon tax on our natural gas bill in Saskatchewan, Canada, and I believe it's Canada-wide, is 50%, okay? So on the natural gas bill, I went over it, and it's literally a 50% tax, carbon tax, and a goods and service tax on the carbon tax. For the life of me, I can't figure out if carbon tax is a good or a service. It's probably more of a service, like getting screwed over. But anyways, carbon dioxide, in my opinion, is plant food because it is, and it's a necessary element. There's not too much carbon dioxide outside. If there was more carbon dioxide outside, actually plants would grow better. Anyways, let's leave that stupidity aside. My natural gas bill in December, so December where I live, was very cold and had abnormally less sunny days than the norm. January was milder and my natural gas bill was less. In December, my total natural gas bill for my entire farm was $450 Canadian. This includes the 50% carbon tax and GST on the carbon tax. So for my entire farm, my natural gas bill was $300 Canadian plus carbon tax, so $450 total. For my entire farm, I have a 3,600 square foot shop that's partially 2-story. That's not calculated into the footprint, what I'm talking about. But 3,600 square foot shop with 16-foot ceilings, heated up to room temperature, or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a 3,000 square foot greenhouse. This is my super efficient house, which actually doesn't even barely use any natural gas. Like, it's so minuscule, can't even factor it in. But then I also have a super inefficient Atco trailer that I'm using temporarily out here. 40-foot Atco trailer with an inefficient furnace on, not much insulation. I would say it costs more to heat my Atco trailer than I use in natural gas for this 3,000 square foot greenhouse. Out of that $450 total natural gas bill on our farm, I would say about not quite half of that. About a third of that is just for the greenhouse at night. The greenhouse has an 80,000 BTU natural gas furnace that's 96% efficient, and it only runs when it's very cold outside. So if this greenhouse was in Nebraska, I wouldn't have to have a wood stove or a natural gas heater in. Like Nebraska's like a dream come true compared to here. If my greenhouse was in Calgary, I could reduce that, I don't know, instead of $200 a month in natural gas bill, which includes the 50% carbon tax and GST on the carbon tax. If this was in Calgary, I would expect that to be $120 a month in natural gas. Not equalized payments for 4 months of the year, for sure. In the winter, sometimes 5, okay, but probably just 4. So total cost for me for this greenhouse, not using any firewood in natural gas for an entire year, the natural gas consumption is about $800. Okay, in natural gas, which includes the 50% carbon tax. So if we didn't have carbon tax, plant food tax, that's what I call it. It's freaking hilarious. I'd use about $550 a year in natural gas, which is nothing. Now, I don't have my hydronic heating system, in-floor heat system hooked up. I don't have all of my fish tanks. I don't have my solar evacuated tubes, and I didn't even use any firewood. I've just been too busy in that. I could successfully heat this on just firewood, but it's not as efficient as natural gas. It takes all your time, and it actually costs more than natural gas. But once all of these components are set up, I can reduce that to literally, I probably don't need natural gas, So again, what factors? It's just like a house. It's passive solar design, super insulation, a big footprint, passive geothermal technology, if I'm going to coin that term, thermal mass on the inside. Those are all ways that you can reduce that. So there you go. First battery down. Had to replace it. Okay, where was I? Natural gas. So never ever put anyone down that's an innovator, sharing information, an entrepreneur, somebody trying to do anything. But Curtis Stone, I forget what he spent on solar panels. I've never talked to Curtis Stone. I've been meaning to reach out in my spare time, but maybe we could have a chat. I'd love to chat with him. But anyways, over $100,000 for a solar panel system off grid. Is that anywhere close to feasible? I don't think it is. Now, his passive solar greenhouse doesn't use it in the wintertime. Why? Because it's too cold, and you could have maybe changed some things on it. No offense, again, great stuff, anybody putting out anything, but having that natural gas is a clean form of energy to have. So, for example, Curtis Stoney, over $100,000 off-grid solar panel system in the deep of the winter, not enough power, has a diesel generator backup, and then it now has a outdoor wood boiler that's going to also be an electrical consumer with a pump to try to heat his buildings as well. So being off grid is not a fantasy. It's just very convenient while available to have those resources, right? So for example, if I lost all electric and power, here's another thing. Cost to run the greenhouse. I have 5 100-watt fans for ventilation because it's a closed-in environment. The plants will get leggy, and I need the air to cyclone around. So I'm running 500 watts 24/7 for, I guess, 5 months of the year. So there's another cost. So you need a lot of electrical panels to do that. Solar panels if you're going to go off grid. That's another cost. But to put my natural gas bill in perspective, if you're not Canadian and don't know how screwed we get by the system and government and everything, but my entire farm bill in the dead of winter. So December, not as sunny, $450, which includes the butt raping of the plant food tax and goods and service tax on the plant food butt raping tax. In January, my entire farm natural gas bill was $350 because it was milder and we had the right amount of sunny days, right? To put this in perspective, in December, talking to people with older, dated homes in the city, what was their natural gas bill? Okay, their natural gas bill was $300 was their total bill, like total usage to heat an 1,100 square foot older home in the city. I heat 3,000 square foot greenhouse, 3,600 square foot shop with a second story not included in that, a house and an inefficient ATCO trailer for not much more than an older 1,100 square foot house. Okay, so if you're in the States and you think things are expensive there, Canada is high cost of living and way too much government and stupidity. But anyways, that's what we have to deal with. So again, going completely off-grid, solar panels don't help the environment. Electric cars don't help the environment, just so you know. So I wouldn't be doing solar panels in the future to help the environment. I do it because the collective stupidity of everyone is so untrustworthy and they're winning that I'm not sure that they can provide me cheap, reliable power in the future. Why I do the greenhouse. It's not saving the environment. Well, even though it does, right? The collective stupidity means that there's not going to be healthy food. The healthy food at the grocery store that's going to be available is going to be so bloody expensive that it actually makes financial sense for me to do this. Because they're taxing the crap out of fuel, you're not going to be able to travel anywhere. It's going to be too expensive to travel. You're not going to be able to go on vacations like the good old days. People still think that they can go on Canadians can go on a tropical vacation every year to get away. Well, I don't need to. I go out in my beautiful environment and sit under my banana plants and eat some fresh passion fruit and oranges and hang out with the kids and go in the hot tub, go in our sauna that I got to build yet, sit and relax and have fresh air and get natural sunlight on my skin. Like just for that, for the cost and the time it took me to build this and the ongoing cost to have it, we save way more of that in vegetables, and that's me barely having a system in place and just the ambiance of it, right? So, for example, if you wanted a 8-year-old wakeboarding boat, a really good one, it would be the same cost as this. And then if you live in the city and you need to pay somebody to store it for most of the year until the couple weekends that you use it, my cost to run the entire greenhouse is probably similar to your storage fees at a lot to store your wakeboarding boat. Okay. Okay, carbon dioxide deficiencies. So, okay. So in an enclosed environment doesn't have very many beings enough of the time, like myself or animals, creating carbon dioxide for plants, because carbon dioxide is plant food, we have a carbon dioxide deficiency ever so slightly. So the plants are converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. There's way more plants in here than there is me and my family to create carbon dioxide. So we have a carbon dioxide deficiency. I have tried rabbits in cages. Now before I had the concrete, like first winter of the greenhouse, rabbits in cages and chickens. And so the rabbits in cages, I did a puckboard poop collector and cleaned and sprayed the rabbits like pee and poop twice a day, and it still stinks like rabbit urine. Rabbits stink it up. So in my closed-in environment. So chickens were the same thing. I kept those guys close or as clean as you could possibly imagine, like literally twice a day going and cleaning up their everything. And it was dusty like chickens and smelly like chickens. So that's not happening in a closed environment. I walk in here and it's like you're walking off the plane landing in Cancun. If you're a Canadian, you know that feeling if you've ever traveled there. You walk in here, it's fresh, hot, and humid. It's beautiful. When I walked in there with the rabbits and chicken little test, it smelled like rabbit urine and a barn. So that doesn't work. I initially thought that was going to work, but not so much. Maybe if I had an air exchanger that would take down the rabbit urine smell and things, but still, I don't want them in here. Fish give off carbon dioxide. I only have 2 fish tanks with minimal fish in there as my tests, and I'm just so busy I haven't had time. When I have lots of fish in lots of tanks, fish give off carbon dioxide, so that's a natural way I can do that. I guess mushrooms. So we do, with the high humidity, have some actually edible types of mushrooms popping up in the greenhouse because of the conditions in here, which is kind of great to see. Like, the natural fungus is great to see, but my high humidity is probably too much. Mushrooms, it would be better if it would, like, better conditions would be a dark space for mushrooms, and it's super light in here. So for farming mushrooms, maybe I could do that in a insulated sea can behind the greenhouse, and then exchange air in between or something to get some natural carbon dioxide. But I bought a natural gas carbon dioxide generator for the greenhouse, and you can get, they're expensive though, CO2 monitor controller, where when the CO2 drops to a certain level, it'll kick on to do that. But for now, I'm just going to essentially turn it on maybe at night or something to get some CO2 going. And then, so that's using a little bit of natural gas, which has that carbon tax, GST on the carbon tax. So converting cow farts, methane gas, which is natural gas, into carbon dioxide, but I have to pay that carbon tax. But the optimum growing conditions is 400 or over 1,000 parts per million. So a big greenhouse grower gets carbon dioxide generators because their plants do way better in 1,000 parts per million carbon dioxide or more. Nothing wrong with more. Outside in the atmosphere is 400 parts per million. So we're dangerously more close to going into an ice age and all plant life dying than having a tropical paradise of plants growing faster and converting more of that CO2 into oxygen. So essentially, more CO2 in the greenhouse makes my plants up to double the growth in them, and which then creates more oxygen. So it's a vicious cycle. If I give them more CO2, they grow faster and there's more abundant plant life, and then they make more oxygen. So nature is very amazing. But even once I do an air exchanger, so it's 400 parts per million CO2 outside only. It would be better if it was more for plant growth. And then a deficit in the greenhouse. Maybe once I get all that fish, I can fix that deficit. But even with an air exchanger, I'm probably still going to use a little bit of natural gas to make more CO2 because it's worth it for the health of my plants. And then they make more oxygen for me. So hashtag government is stupid, and so are most climate people. But anyway. Okay, the next massive tangent. How do you calculate your sun angles? Okay, this is a big one. So I hope you like math and trigonometry. So I was very good at math, but I have to do a completely separate video. I'm setting up a whiteboard in my little makeshift studio so I can run you through trigonometry and the functions like cosine and tan to determine, adjacent, hypotenuse, and opposite sides of a triangle, right angle triangle. Okay, so you can do this for a passive solar house. Okay, a passive solar house is not built like the greenhouse. Let's start with this. Passive solar house doesn't have as much glazing on the greenhouse because your house would overheat and then you'd lose too much heat at night. You build a greenhouse this way with no overhangs to protect completely from the summer sun because it's plants. Plants want lots of light. So we have to deal with more heat gain during the day and more heat loss at night. In a passive solar house, it's a less percentage of glazing so that your house heats but doesn't overheat too bad in the wintertime. And then at night in the wintertime, you don't lose too much heat. And then in the summertime, your house is completely protected from the sun coming in so your house doesn't overheat at all to reduce on electricity. So my little house, it barely uses any natural gas or heating, and are in a properly built, well insulated, passive solar house, you really wouldn't need air conditioning in the heat of the summer as well. So you can literally build these things. Like, again, I only have so much resources, and property tax is very expensive. So I decided to build the smallest house I could stand, a bigger building that has more thermal mass. If it's built properly, insulated properly, situated properly, it's better, a big building. So in my house, just because of the size, we still need an air conditioner, even though I don't have any sun coming in. It's just because it's small. If I had a big house with more thermal mass air, more thermal mass concrete, more thermal mass everything in it, I wouldn't need a bill. So big houses are more efficient and work better than little houses if it's a properly designed house, properly insulated, situated to the sun properly, etc. Okay, I guess I'll take a picture of this, future editor Dean. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a picture of a passive solar house. So this is facing south. This is the overhang, the eave overhang. This is a structural beam above the window. This is where the glazing starts. This is the window. This is where the bottom of the window, and 3 feet here. So my house, I designed it 9-foot ceilings, a structural beam overhang of 12 inches, the window, and then 3 feet above the surface, and then guessing and checking all these calculations. But 3 feet, so I could have a countertop in a tiny house. I have to make very good use of the space in there for function as well. Or the back of a couch. You don't want glazing like to be the back of the couch, and you don't want it like behind a counter or a cabinet, right? But anyways, you have to determine what values do you know. So you can look up, and I'll link a website in the description where you can look up the sun angles at your geographical location on planet Earth. So you can find out your latitude, longitude, and figure out your solstices. And literally any day of the year, you can figure out the angle of the sun at solar noon, when the sun is directly south and highest in the sky on a particular day. So where I live, it's 52 degrees north, and this makes my winter solstice. So when the coldest day of the year, when the sun is lowest, is 14 degrees. Summer solstice is 61 degrees. So I have these values. So you have to, for a passive solar house, you have to figure out what values you have. So with a right angle triangle, you have a 90-degree angle. 14 degrees is the winter solstice, and then you know the other angle. So you know the angles of your right angle triangle, but you need one side. So what is a constant? So for a structural beam, the way your trusses want to sit, facing south, you know that's 12 inches, and then your window starts. So you input 12 inches, and then you use trigonometry function, like if you don't know, like sin function is opposite side over hypotenuse. Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tan function is opposite over adjacent. So what do we know, and what are we trying to figure out? So we have our tan angle, and we have the opposite, but we're trying to find the adjacent angle. So the formula for that is tan 14 degrees is equal to 12 inches over x. We're trying to find x, the overhang. So type in, the easiest way, type in tan function, tan 14 degrees gives you the ratio of 0.2493. So go through your formula, and you end up with your overhang is exactly 48 inches at my location on the planet. So on the winter solstice, when the sun is lowest, I get full sun in my windows with a 48-inch overhang. If you had a 3-foot overhang at certain times of the year, you're going to get too much sun, and your house is going to overheat, right? But then you have to figure out where's the bottom of your window. So you make another triangle, and to find when the sun, what time of year do you want the sun to completely shade your window? So for me, it was May 10th here is where I'm completely shaded. So May 10th for me means that I can't quite plant things outside, but it's getting fairly nice outside where I don't need any additional heat in my house. So I don't want the sun overheating my house from May 10th on to the summer and then back again when it starts to get cold. You can figure out these angles. So you make your other triangle, and for me, so if I want a 48-inch overhang and I'm going to put a window that's in a 9-foot wall 3 feet above the ground, where is that? So I have to use, again, the tan function. So I'm looking for tan angle A, though, so that I can figure out what time of year it is. So tan function A degrees is equal to 72 inches is from the eave to the bottom of the window over a 48-inch overhang, and you run that through the function, and I get angle A is 56 degree sun angle, which is May the 10th is when I'm completely shaded. Okay. Hopefully that made sense for you. The same thing, trigonometry for a greenhouse. You have to figure out, use your brain, figure out what constants do you have. So the constants that we have is right angle triangle, and we know the degree of the sun, 14 degrees or 61 degrees in the longest day of the summer, or any day in between. You can figure out exactly where the sun is. So a triangle, and what is my constant? So let's do a test here. My greenhouse is 32 feet deep from the pole to the back wall, 43 feet overall, but the south doesn't matter right now for determining the sun angles because the shading function of the greenhouse is the peak of the greenhouse. Okay, so you have to build yourself a right angle triangle. So what do I know here? I know that this is 14 degrees, the winter solstice sun angle on a right angle triangle, and then I know the other degrees, and then I know, let's do a test, 32 feet deep, like my greenhouse. Okay, you run this through and you end up with 8 feet. So in 32 feet, the adjacent side is, the opposite side in the tan function is 8 feet. So my greenhouse is 15 feet from the concrete to the top of the pole. The peak of the greenhouse is 15 feet. And we found out this angle in a right angle triangle is 8 feet, meaning that the sun on the winter solstice comes up the back wall of my greenhouse 7 feet. Okay, and the back wall of the greenhouse is 11 foot 3 inches. So I know that it's always shaded in the back part of the greenhouse for 4 feet. The sun will never directly hit that, and it will never directly hit the roof of my greenhouse. Okay, so you need to know trigonometry. You need to find out your sun angles, everything like that. Just briefly, another question somebody asked is, why did you do your greenhouse south end at a 45-degree angle? Okay, so before we had beautiful polycarbonate, which refracts the light hits it and it refracts. The old school guys, I'm terrible with authors' names and books' names, but anyways, you wanted the glass, if you used glass, you wanted it perpendicular to when you wanted the most heating, because glass works different than polycarbonate. For polycarbonate, it doesn't matter. If I just wanted to use this greenhouse for the winter and no summer, I would have done an angle like this. I did not want to do that. I wanted to use the greenhouse in the summertime as well. So why did I do a 45-degree angle? I get more growing space in full sun in the summertime and the wintertime. 45-degree angle is easy construction, and the angle in relation to the sun with polycarbonate doesn't matter as much because we have polycarbonate now. 45-degree angle doesn't accumulate any sort of significant amount of snow, so you can build it without any snow load issues. If you built it like this, which is a verge permaculture greenhouse, if you built it like this, like a Chinese style greenhouse, you're going to have snow accumulate and you have to factor in the weight and have beefier construction. Mine, I just have to worry about wind hammering at it. The south end, I'll get into Walipinis and why those don't work as well. But the south end, I have 45-degree angle and then a 4-foot pony wall. Out of that 4-foot pony wall is essentially 2 feet of bus windows and then 2 feet of just wall. Why do I have that? Why didn't I dig the greenhouse into the ground? It's because snow load. When it snows, the snow doesn't accumulate at a 45-degree angle. It whips off the greenhouse and it accumulates there, and then I can safely push snow away. If I drop the greenhouse into the ground, which I could have done even 3 feet, I'd be able to get the same amount of winter sunlight. I wouldn't have shading issues, but I have snow load issues. So every time you think of something, there's additional consequences, both good and bad, for everything that you do. This is why government wrecks everything in the world, because they can't figure out consequences of their actions past one step. So, but you have to think about everything. So a Walipinis don't work where I live. So everybody's like, I want to do a Walipini. That sounds wonderful, right? So Walipini, if you don't know, it's digging a hole in the ground and doing a greenhouse in the ground, okay? And doing your thing so there's no place for snow to accumulate. And then if this is south and you're in a hole, let me tell you about my sun angles where I live and why Walipinis don't work. So let's use our tan function, right? Tan is opposite over adjacent for a right angle triangle. But let's do it to find a ratio for shading. And what it comes down to for me at a tan 14-degree function, if I have a 1-foot pencil on the coldest, shortest day of the year, this 1-foot pencil is going to give me a 4-foot shade behind it. So a Walipini, let's put a Walipini with this ratio that we now figured out with our trigonometry tan function. For every 1 foot, I have 4 feet of shading. So if you do a 1 foot down Walipini, you're going to have 4 foot of shading. If you dig a hole 8 feet down, you're going to have 32 feet of shade in the greenhouse. So literally the sun, when you want it to hit plants, doesn't hit any of your plants. So Walipinis do not work. Walipinis also, if you live where it snows like I do, there's no place for snow to accumulate. What you can do is my greenhouse design in the north side of a hill or outside of the north side of this greenhouse, you could beef up the wall, build it with concrete, spend all that extra money, and then fill it with earth if you want. So the front of my greenhouse, again, I couldn't drop it in the ground because then the snow accumulates. And again, not to pick on anyone, but there's here's a name shout out if you want to check out their channel. They inquired I'm supposed to do a video with them to talk about our greenhouses, but they're in Mongolia. Simple Wild Living is their channel, and it's very similar to mine. And again, I never pick on anybody. You're innovating, awesome, but one thing that you're going to have a problem with is you kind of dug yours into the ground and you don't have a pony wall for snow to accumulate. So I don't even know if they get snow there. Maybe they don't, but if they do get snow, then it's going to come up and sit on your polycarbonate, and then you have an issue with that. So you can't drop the greenhouse in the ground. You can, if you want to spend a whole bunch of extra money on concrete structure and a better structure to hold back a bunch of earth, like in the north side of a hill, or just make your own hill. You can do that. How much benefit do you get out of that? A little bit. But mine's super insulated, so the benefit if you super insulate it isn't that much. Because it's so cold where I live and the frost goes down 4 feet and up to 12 feet, I have seen it personally. If you did earth on the north side of the greenhouse, like an earth ship type house, I would have that earth, but then just below the surface, I would insulate with a rigid insulation to protect that cold from that thermal mass heat sink, like protect the earth from it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a frozen block anyways, and it's probably going to suck more heat out of the greenhouse than it's worth if you don't insulate it to the warm part of your building. I will do an entire video on the trigonometry for finding the sun values for building a passive solar house, passive solar greenhouse, passive solar building of any kind, and a better explanation why Walipinis do not work where I live.